All right, let's talk about one of the most expensive mistakes you can make in data engineering, and that is choosing a cheap tool. It's a classic trap, right? It looks like a huge win on the budget spreadsheet, but it ends up costing you way, way more in hidden expenses. So we're going to break down exactly where those costs are hiding.
This quote, this just says it all. It comes from an engineer running a massive data platform. See, when you go for that tool with the tiny license fee, you're not actually saving money. You're just changing who pays for it. That cost doesn't just disappear. Nope. It gets shifted right onto your engineering team's time, your cloud bill, and frankly, your operational stability.
The sticker price is a total distraction. The real price is paid in late-night maintenance, constant firefighting, and just lost productivity. So in this explainer, we're going to give you a really clear framework to calculate the total cost of ownership, or TCO, and hopefully see these hidden costs before they blow up your budget. So what is TCO, really? Well, it's not just what you pay up front. It's the full picture of every single cost a tool is going to generate over its entire life. We're talking about the salaries of the people who have to babysit it, the cloud resources it burns through, the price of downtime, literally everything it takes just to keep the lights on.
This right here, this is the real math for any data tool. That license fee is just one, often small piece of the puzzle. The real heavy hitters? Oh, that's your engineering hours, the on-call pager duty, all that wasted cloud spend, and what I like to call the complexity tax, the price you pay for having to stitch everything together yourself.
Think of it like an iceberg, right? This visualizes the problem perfectly. The license fee, that's the small part you see sticking out of the water. Maybe 15–20% of the total cost. But that massive hidden chunk of ice underneath, that's the other 80+%. That's all the operational and labor costs. And that's the stuff that sinks ships, or, engineering budgets.
Now, to be fair, I get it. The pull towards cheap is totally understandable. There's always immense pressure to keep budgets down. There's the whole appeal of open source, a very healthy fear of vendor lock-in, and of course, there's that classic engineer's mantra, right? We can build that ourselves. And you know what? These are all valid things to consider.
And hey, let's be super clear about something. I'm not saying cheap is always the wrong move. It's not. If you're an early-stage startup, or you have a really simple low-stakes workflow, or a team with super deep in-house expertise, a low-cost tool can be the absolute right call. The key, the reason it works in those cases, is that all those hidden complexity costs, they stay small and manageable.
Okay, so we've got the framework down. Now for the fun part. Let's crack open that TCO equation and see where free starts to get really expensive out in the wild.
Okay, this one is the big one, the number one hidden cost. The assumption is so simple, zero license fee equals zero cost. But the reality? Free software gets paid for with something way more valuable, your senior engineer's time. Every single hour they spend on maintenance or writing glue code or fixing that free tool is an hour they are not spending on the projects that actually move your business forward. I mean, how many times have we seen this? A supposedly free open source tool, maybe an orchestrator or something, it ends up needing so much manual care and feeding that you basically have to assign an engineer to be its full-time babysitter. You didn't get rid of a subscription fee, you just hired a person to be the subscription, and they're probably a lot more expensive. Let's actually run the numbers here. It's a super common pattern. A team avoids, say, a $100,000 enterprise license, but then two of their senior engineers end up spending about a quarter of their time each just wrestling with the free alternative. You do the math on the salaries, and boom, you're easily spending $150,000 a year in hidden labor costs. That's 50% more than the license you were trying to avoid in the first place. So where else does the money leak out? Oh yeah, your cloud bill. It's so easy to trick yourself into thinking, oh, the license budget is over here and the cloud budget is over there. They're separate. But they are absolutely 100% connected. A cheap tool can take every single dollar you saved on licenses and just light it on fire in your data warehouse bill.
So here's how it happens. That free or simple tool, it probably didn't have the fancy query optimizer or smart caching layers or any of the cost guardrails you'd get with an enterprise version. And that means more full table scans, more inefficient queries just hammering your warehouse. And you know what happens when things get slow? The default response is just crank up the warehouse size. The costs they creep up on you, and then one day, bam!
I saw this happen in real life. Here's an anonymized example. A company swapped out their commercial BI tool, saved about $15K a month on the license. High fives all around, right? Wrong. The new, cheaper tool was so inefficient that their cloud bills shot up by an extra $20K a month. They were literally paying $5,000 more per month for a cheaper tool, and it took them a while to even notice. Ouch. Okay, let's talk about a word you hear all the time in marketing: flexible. It sounds great, doesn't it? But here's the thing. In the data world, flexibility without any guardrails is just another word for chaos. It creates what I call a governance tax that your team pays with their time, scrambling to clean up the mess later. And the classic example of this is a missing semantic layer. Without that central, shared place to define your key metrics just one time, every single team just makes up their own version of active user or monthly revenue. And then, you know what happens next. The dashboards don't match, leadership gets confused, and your best engineers are stuck in endless meetings arguing about definitions instead of building stuff. You can almost set your watch to how this unfolds. Step 1, everyone's excited about the new, flexible tool. Step 2, metric definitions start to drift apart. Step 3, the inevitable "why don't these numbers match" meeting with leadership. And Step 4, trust in the data is completely shot, and your best people have become glorified data accountants. Okay, so we've spent a lot of time talking about the traps. Let's pivot to solutions. How do we actually avoid falling into these traps? Let's walk through a practical framework you can use to evaluate tools based on their total impact, not just their sticker price. Something like this, a simple trade-off matrix. It forces you to have a more honest conversation. You're not just looking at one number anymore. You're actually scoring different options on the things that really matter. How much engineering time will this thing suck up? What's the on-call burden going to look like? How does it scale? It makes the trade-offs painfully obvious. And hey, maybe you're already living this reality. Here are some red flags to look for. If your team is writing tons and tons of custom glue code just to make things talk to each other, if jobs need constant manual restarts, or if all the knowledge about a critical system lives inside one engineer's head, guess what? You've got a cheap but expensive tool on your hands. You're already paying the price. Look, if you take only one thing away from all of this, let it be this. In any modern tech organization, your people are your most expensive and valuable resource. Full stop. Not licenses, not cloud compute. People. So the single best cost-saving strategy you can have is to optimize for their time and focus. A tool that saves them time is almost always worth the money. So from now on, let's just reframe the whole conversation. Let's stop asking, what's the cheapest tool to buy? It's the wrong question. The real question, the one we should all be asking, is what costs the least to operate safely and reliably over its entire lifecycle? When you start asking that question, you start building a data platform that's not just powerful, but also sustainable and truly cost-effective.